You are listening to PatchBay on TYM KRS.
Welcome to PatchBay. I'm Whisker. I produce podcasts and internet TV shows and music and stuff like that. And Shane here. Well, what do you do, Shane?
I work for a recording studio in Winnipeg called Platinum Gold Studios, and I forgot to mention last time, but I also work for a record company called Sunshine Records, not to be confused with Sun Records that produced Elvis, but we do have some Elvis types as well. And you can reach me on Twitter at OBDGill.
Yeah. On the About page of the show here, we'll have a bunch of contact information so you guys can get a hold of either of us, and we'll make that real easy. So, has anything interesting been going on up there at the studio in Canada?
Candidate. That is a good question. Well, I finished 2 Pow Wow records in the last few weeks, which are kind of fun situations to record. And I finished up a country rock record in the last little while as well. So specifically, Pow Wow. It's traditional recording. There's no such, you don't go back and do redos on bits and things like that. It's what happens around the drum basically. So I tend to, when I mic those, there's a very specific miking technique which I should try and draw a diagram of for you. And then I also tend to like room mic the room as well, just to get a little bit of ambiance.
So, how many performers work in those groups typically?
Normally, there's usually about 12 to 13. Some groups, almost all Pow groups will be mostly dudes. They do have girl singers sometimes, but it's this weird traditional thing where they actually stand behind the men, behind the drum, kind of. So usually what happens is you get 13 guys sitting around a 6-foot drum that's usually made out of elk or moose or deer hide, and all those skins, of course, have different tones. My favorite is usually elk because it has a nice big deep kind of woomph, and which you can imagine when you get 13 guys sitting very close together, it's difficult to get microphones in there. So there's a little trick to do it properly, and yeah, so it's somewhere in there now. You're in Minnesota, yes?
Yeah, Rochester,
Yeah.
Minnesota.
So you guys would still be considered. There's 2 different styles of Pow Wow. There's northern style and there's southern style, and there's obviously different tribes and stuff across North America. But basically, the difference to a listener is a lot of guys will sing really high, sort of pitched. That's northern style, and southern style is a lot lower sounding. If you want to kind of catch what northern or southern style sounds like, you probably want to check. There's a company way down south that do southern style stuff, and they're called Drumbeat Indian Arts, I believe. I'm not sure of their website, but so that's basically the difference between the two. Yeah. So I just did 2 records by one group from out of Saskatchewan, which is the province to the west of me, and then I did another group from Ontario, which is the province east of me and north of you.
That's one thing that I don't know. The sort of media perception of what being a recording engineer, producer, etc., entails is quite a bit different than what it can actually be. And in my experience, knowing how to run a board, knowing how to record things has opened up a lot of really, really unique experiences in life that have absolutely nothing to do with pop rock groups and that sort of
Yeah,
music industry
if you
stuff.
I think a lot of guys who go to school tend to think that we're just going to work with rock bands all the time and, you know, do lots of blow and, be the typical recording engineer guy who's in all the movies. But I don't think I'd want to do that all the time, just because everybody has sort of a different personality, and and I tend to a lot of sort of that kind of group of people, like rock groups. Not that they all have the same personality, but a lot of guys want to be the next big thing, and I quite like doing these. I like to call them like campfire records, and it's sort of um, like what's the word? Like off the beaten path type music, not your usual mainstream kind of stuff. So like powwow and old time country music and old time instrumental music and stuff like that. It just makes it a bit more. It keeps you on your toes because you can't mix a Métis fiddle record the same way you'd mix a rock record and vice versa.
It's good to be dynamic like that, and it's also really cool to get to meet people from totally different walks of life. Always fun.
Well, this last group I had, the last power group I was working with, they actually had a traveling elder with them, which tends to be the case. There's usually an elder that will come along, that's not singing but just there sort of for emotional support, kind of a thing. And his deal was he just needed the guys to finish the record so that he could get back and watch horse racing or something. But it was kind of an interesting job. I was sort of saying to him, I'm like, how do you luck out with this job? And he's like, you just have to be old enough. So, but yeah, and those are usually the cats that will sit in the studio with me and sort of tell me the stories behind the songs and that kind of stuff. So it's usually a lot of fun. Like you say though, it's nice because you do get to meet a lot of different people and yeah.
I'm remembering this live one I did. Oh gosh, probably in the '90s. Um, it was for a church, and they needed a lot of individual microphones, but they also needed sort of a choir hanging mic set up. And I didn't think much of it. So, I came and I got all the mics hung and I got all the SM58s out and got them all, through the snake and all that. And had everything up and running. And then the group shows up. And it turns out that it's I don't know, probably 30, 40 male singers from a maximum security penitentiary. And they
Mhm.
were all murderers.
Mm,
And they sort of found Jesus while they were
nice.
imprisoned. And they decided they wanted to get into sort of a cappella singing as a way to sort of
Mhm.
get back out into the world because they all were serving life sentences and they would never see the outside again. So
Mhm.
I got to talk to all these guys as I was setting up each one of their mics. And I tell you what, the singing talent that these guys had was just completely off the charts. You could tell that they didn't have much else to do with their time and they spent all day, every day practicing because holy wow, were these guys good.
Yeah, and that's nice to hear too. Is that um, that there are trying to find something to do with their time and doing something that's um, more positive. But yeah, no, that's the thing when you have that kind of time. It's amazing. I've yet to record anybody from the pen, although I have done some hip hop mixtapes that guys have recorded on cassette tapes and stuff like that, and then I've done mastering for them. So and a lot of it's you know very specific to the lyrical content is all obviously about being in jail and stuff like that, or why they got in jail, this kind of stuff. So it's definitely interesting. But so 30 or 40 guys, that's crazy.
It
That's a
was
lot of kids.
huge, yeah, and
Wow.
I'd say about 12 of them had solos at various parts, and they really kinda weren't allowed to move around,
Hmm.
because of the guards and whatnot. They sort of
Right.
had to stand in place and sing their solos without, walking up or walking back, so they all needed their own solo mics, plus it needed, a group of hanging mics from the ceiling.
Hmm. Yeah, I've had some difficulty doing choirs just for that reason with the solos and stuff like that. I used to have a choir teacher would ask me, why couldn't I just give a mic to everybody in the room to record with? And I just tried to explain, how phase works and how that's not really a good plan.
Yeah.
So what I tend to do is I tend to stereo mic the choir and then room mic the choir, and I'll usually put spot mics up. But um, yeah, sometimes it works, but it really depends on the choir and what their ability is with um, how much experience they've had recording. I mean, some guys are quite a lot, better at doing it because they've done it a lot. So just to know when to come in and when to come out, and they're worrying about breathing and whether they're on time and pitch and oh my god, I'm growing gray hair thinking about it. But yeah, I had a interesting experience once with a lot of people. I actually had, I think, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 170 people come through the studio in one day. Um, it was a gospel project, and what it was a, they had a backing band, and the backing band would play for a choir. And I had um, a bunch of different choirs from different communities all show up on the same day, but nobody gave me any sort of. They just said there's a choir and a band coming, so I'm like, okay, I got set up for that. But I didn't realize it. I had, like the door opening up, and I was like there on a Saturday by myself, and it'd be like, I need to, out of the 130 people that were there, like just get just this choir in the studio right now, and nobody else follow me. I just need this, like, so it was, and that was one of my first sessions by myself. I was just like, it was crazy, but like nothing like get thrown into the hot seat right away.
Totally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a scary situation. um, anyway, I'm just going to go for a walk with my laptop here, so let's just keep talking.
All right. One of the interesting things that I think of as an adult, thinking about what you're saying about the choir being uh, in tune, in time, and all that sort of thing. I imagine the peer review process in that particular group was somewhat terrifying. I don't
Oh
know
yeah,
if I would be able to do anything but my best if I were in that group.
yeah, no kidding. That's one of those times where you definitely don't want to blow a note. Um, yeah, no kidding. That's crazy. That's the thing about that too with the peer review thing. Like the more you spend time with people, the more you have the ability to sort of point stuff out. And a lot of times when I'm in studio with somebody for the first time, I don't ever want to be Simon Cowell on them, especially if they're paying the bill. But once you get that sort of working relationship with people, it becomes a lot easier to, you know, point out you were a little flat here, or but as a first off, kind of thing, it's really difficult to um, you still have to try to get the best out of somebody, but not hurt their feelings at the same time, and still try to make a good recording and hope they come back. And have you run into those types of scenarios as well?
A lot of the bands that I've worked with were more in a live context, so it wasn't really my responsibility if they sucked or not, which is
Right.
always nice. But more recently, I've been doing a lot of recording and whatnot for the various music projects that I'm actually involved with directly, and usually I try to just keep it to working with people I know and people I'm close enough with that I can tell them that they suck. So
Yeah. Or,
yeah.
or that take sucked and we need to do it again. Yeah, it's difficult to be happy, optimistic, and um, happily optimistic, judgmental at the same time. But I actually learned from one of the best. So I've sort of not really stolen the way he does things, but when I first started, the ever enthusiastic engineer guy was born, and I've sort of maintained that as long as we're having fun, kind of atmosphere. Which is, I've been in a few studios, and not where I was running the session, but where it was, um, a lot more picking at little bits and pieces, and it just feels more like work than um, and it just doesn't become fun anymore. So not a good scene.
Yeah, we were tracking last weekend, and the guitarist is used to dealing with doing takes over and over again, so it wasn't a big deal. But the vocalist gets a little grumpy after a while, that sort
Mhm.
of thing.
You got to baby the vocalist.
Yeah, they're a little bit more temperamental.
This is true. Yeah, there's ways around that. I tend to, when I record vocals, I tend not to uh, spend a lot of time with them. I try to get as much done as I can in a reasonable amount of time. Usually, what I'll do when I track vocals is I don't like the whole punching in line for line thing or just do this line in the chorus. That it loses any kind of human.
Yeah, I'm totally
But I
with you there. I always try to get the whole chorus down in one. I always try to get the whole verse down in one. I don't like to, cut and paste all sorts of different pieces and parts from various
well,
takes because
yeah,
you just lose the performance when you do it that
you
way.
do. And how I usually kind of go about it is I'll have them sort of do the shits and giggles take first. Um, and that's mostly for levels for me and to get it out. And then once they get comfortable with me in their room and their headphone mix and that kind of stuff, um, then I'll tend to get them to do maybe about 3 takes. And a lot of the times, a really interesting trick when people are recording vocals, they tend to be a lot more excited and a lot more into it by the end of the tune, right? And what I found is that when you listen back to a song, you realize, you know, the first verse is good, the second verse is good, the last chorus is great, but that first chorus, they weren't really in the flow of the tune. So what I'll do when I do a track, I'll automatically, when they finish that last chorus, just say, hey, let's just try the first chorus one more time on this take. And just keep in mind what you just did to try and get that same sort of pumped up feeling that, you know what I mean?
Mm.
And then, so what I'll do is I'll take, usually like, I'll do stuff like that, do 3 or 4 takes, send them home, comp the best bits, unless there was the best take. And then if there's still, out of all of that stuff, one wonky line or one thing that's not really Pro Toolsable, but like we need to try it one more time, I'll usually obviously send them my best version of what I can come up with. And then after that, usually they'll come in if they really need to and do one little bit or something like that, rather than spending a day and a half working on, you know, 2 lines or whatever, because they only have so much ability to do it before they get bored.
Oh yeah, of course. You
Or
can tell when they're getting bored too, because they very
yeah,
quickly lose the ability to understand that when you push that record button and you sort of get that blank look on your face, they think after a while that you're not doing anything
yeah,
while that is running, that they're doing all the work. The more bored they get, the less they realize that you're very, very intensely listening to every
little
tiny
bit.
little thing that they're doing so that you can find that performance for them and get it on the final mix.
Yeah, exactly. Um, just going towards guitar players too, as a secondary note, there's certain guitar players will tend to, like to do as many tracks as possible, but um, and like sort of the experimenting in the studio kind of thing, which is okay to a degree. My only ever issue is when somebody can't give me a definite, this is what I want. I mean, you want to do 13 guitar rhythm tracks, that's fine, but I want to know in the end what's solo, what is the not just here's a little bit that I think might work, kind of like by the end of the day, I want to know, okay, what's or the end of the week, I want to know what is actually going to stay, because I don't know if you ever run into the over tracking guitar player.
Oh, of course. I'm
Yeah.
probably guilty of it myself sometimes where, you kind of want to lay down, a couple extra layers on there and get it nice and full. But yeah.
I have fun with the guitar player in my band because he'll never play the solo the same way twice, and so it's really about, for him it's really about it was the one, and for him I need to give him a reasonable amount of pre-roll, because to try and sort of receive some kind of inspiration, you know 8 bars sometimes isn't enough to really to get right into it. Not that I, roll it from the start of the song or whatever, but yeah, he does make it difficult to a degree when you have sort of like an amazing solo and there's like one little sort of stinky bit. But there are times where I'll take, the first 8 from one take and the second 8 from the other take. Like I won't take bits and pieces of each because it's just retarded. And if you look at it as a guitar player standpoint, it's sometimes inhumanly possible to be playing
Of
that
course,
fast
yeah.
on one section of the neck and then that fast on another section of the neck, and have the same feel, obviously. But
When I'm
uh,
doing the sort of in the box style, what I like to do is just sort of give them uh, however many bars it is and just loop it so that it'll keep recording the same patch over and over and over again, and just let them go for as long as they want to go, and then I can just pick a take just with a little drop down, which is always nice.
yeah, yeah, I've done that too, but they tend to. It depends on the guitar player. I used to do that a lot, and I'd have guys come in and they listen to every single take, and then be like, "No, I can do better," and then they go back and spend another 10 takes, and then we realize like the second take was the one. So getting the gusto enough to know the band's material and to say that was the one, just stop it, or let them go through the process of doing them anyway, and then knowing full well you already have it.
Yeah, rubber hose full of sand. It doesn't leave marks. Just beat
Yeah,
them.
I know, I know, I know, and I've unplugged them a few times. I've even left it on. I've left it on record and went out and made coffee and came back sometimes. Um, it's a very dangerous thing when the musician knows about Pro Tools, knows about recording to a degree, because they may be spending that kind of time at home trying to get the perfect Eric Clapton solo. But the problem is at home they're not really paying to be in the studio, so sometimes they'll be like, "Holy crap, we spent an hour and a half trying to get an 8-bar solo." I'm like, "Yeah, well that's part of the deal, But um, yeah, it can get out of hand quick. So you have to not only when you do stuff like what I do, you have to kind of watch for those great takes and sort of say, I think we got it. Just as a budget conscious thing. Like I don't like to be, I don't ever want to take somebody for, a bunch of money for no reason. You know what I mean?
I think the bands that you work with are lucky that they've got a that sort of that sort of honesty on the other side of the glass. Because I
Well,
know there's probably a lot of studios out there that are happy to just, you want to do another
oh
one? We'll do another one.
yeah.
Ching, ching.
Well, and that, I mean, but that goes to the what I was saying before too, was um sometimes a band will come in and be like, "Oh, yeah, it was an okay take. Oh, there's just one. There's a part here. There's a part there. Oh, can you edit that?" And I'm just like, it'll take me 2 hours to edit it, or it'll take you, 3 minutes to try it again and do it right. Now that you know where the issues are, be aware of them, kind of. But pre-production's a huge thing. Now, I'm just getting back to the 2 hours of editing. I'm saying like in an extreme, you know, fixing drums and that kind of crap. I can edit quick, um, but yeah, pre-production is a huge thing. I mean, if you can go in and really work through stuff as a band in your rehearsal space and record it, even if you don't record it in such a way that you're multi-tracking stuff, or you're just really recording your ideas and then listening back to it without guitars in your hands because they're usually noodling ensues. Um, then you can be really objective about what's working and what's not working. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. Last week when we were tracking, we were able to get 2 songs tracked in 2 days and lyrics written and arrangement and all that. But we were only able to do that because, well, you know, we're fairly able to work efficiently with each other. But more importantly, we already had a lot of the the harmony and the licks and stuff worked out ahead of time. We'd actually gotten together
There was
down in
ideas for it.
Albuquerque and sort of sat down for a day and a half and found some really good material. And then we all spent the week and a half practicing it on our own so that when we came together, we could just do it.
And that's pre-production too. You know what I mean? Like as long as you're you're spending that time not in the studio. I mean, I've had, once again, sort of doing the honesty thing. Here's a disc, take it home, uh, work on your guitar solo, come back. Instead of you spending 3 hours and knocking your head against the wall trying to come up with something, take it home over the weekend, you know. And I do that a lot with mixing too. Like I'll tell the band, listen, here's what I'm gonna do. We recorded the whole album, everything's done. I'm gonna mix it. It's a lot cheaper and more cost effective if I mix this by myself because I'll make quick decisions as to how this should sound. So I get it to what I call like the 95%. Give it to the band, and then they come back with their little ideas or fixes or those types of things. Rather than having the band in the room mixing, which I don't know. Have you ever have you ever mixed in the room with the band?
Well, I've done, when you're doing with live production sort of thing, you basically are stuck always having the band in the room because
Mm.
they'll walk off to grab drink, coffee, whatever, and they'll hear it out in the room, and they'll come back and they're like, "Oh, the drums are blah blah blah," and whatever. It's like, okay, dude,
Yeah,
I do this 3 times a week. I
yeah.
know what I'm doing. I use this room all the time. You're just here for the day, okay? Go up there, do your little thing.
Turn your damn amp down.
Yeah, and that's kind of bad. But the worst, of course, is their monitor mixes because oh my gosh, musicians can be so. Uh, they the I think a lot of it is psychosomatic. They think they hear
It
things that
is.
they don't, and
Yep,
yeah, I'm sure you've dealt
totally.
with it a million times.
Oh yeah. Uh, the way I do live sound, I don't run anything through the PA except for vocals. That's the way I do it. Depending on the room. But as soon as you start dicking around with trying to fold back vocals and guitars through monitors, you run into the problem of the guitar player not being able to hear himself or the vocalist not being able to hear themselves. And for me, normally the only thing that's coming back through the monitors is the vocals. Most bands that show up at gigs tend to have, you know, big amps, big guitars, usually an amp that's too big for the room they're playing in. I play live with band that I play in. I have a Fender Super Champ, which is like a 15 watts, like 10-inch speaker situation. But I run it through a 15-inch speaker as well, an old trainer speaker. And the way it's wired, the ohmage is kind of ass backwards, so it actually tends to be a bit louder than it needs to be. But I played gigs just with the 10-inch, and I'm fine. I just crank it up. I put it on a stand. I can hear myself fine. The band can hear themselves. We're practicing up enough. I tend to think when people have problems with either headphone mixes or monitor mixes, you're right that they do hear things or think they're hearing things. But I think when you got a band that knows their stuff,
It's
it
just
doesn't.
not a problem if they
Nobody
actually
ever
play
complains about
together.
it.
Yeah.
It's like when they're worried about themselves or whatever. Like you don't need to worry about hearing yourself. Worry about hearing the other guy. My biggest complaint when I play live is I can't hear the other guitar player. I've got him set up. I think he's got a Tweed PV amp. It's a very nice 40-watt amp, and he usually has a 2x12 that he runs into it as well. Or sometimes he'll use just a valve state Marshall amp. But he usually what he'll side load the extension cap. So instead of having it pointing out at the audience, he points it out to the other side of the stage, so we can totally hear what's going on. And then we're fine because the bass player's loud enough. I mean, if you can't hear the drums, there's something clearly wrong with you. And then the only thing that's coming through is for me is it's just the vocals. So I mean, for me, that's usually how I'll start with vocals, having those go through the mains, go through the PA, and then figure it out from there. If something extra needs to happen, then I'll do that. I mean, it depends on the size of the room, but the more stuff you put in there, the more trouble you have usually.
Oh, one of the best pieces of advice for bands out there that are interested in going in to record, I think that we probably both agree on, is that you need to spend the time out in the world playing together in all sorts of different places and all sorts of different crowds and really just sort of work on becoming a unit. And if you get to that point, then your time in the studio will just be so much easier.
Well, I call it memory muscle mode. You get to that point where the songs, they almost get to the point where they're boring. And when they get to the point where they're boring for you to play, you're nailing it usually.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, like I'm playing a show on Wednesday this week, and I'm dressing as a stormtrooper with helmet and everything. And I was sort of worrying about not being able to see where I was on the neck and stuff. And then I was thinking, half the time I'm playing with my eyes closed anyway, so probably doesn't matter at all. Like I've gotten to the point where I know if I don't know these songs, then there's something clearly, there's clearly a bigger issue there. But yeah, no, you're right. The more practicing that you do, the more playing live you do. I think you really need to road test or play test stuff before you record it.
So let's make sure that that ends up on YouTube. Okay, I want to see this.
Me playing in it's just a cheapy stormtrooper. It was like $27. It's the shirt and the helmet, but I'll definitely make sure there's pictures for sure. Anyway, I'll make sure I bring a camera. Yeah.
All right. Well, we
What
are
else is wearing?
out of time for this week, unfortunately. You guys can find this show every week at patchbay.tv. There's an RSS feed on there. You can automatically get it on your phone or iTunes, whatever. You can also just push play on the page. We make it real easy. And like we said earlier, if you want to let us know how we're doing, let us know what we should be doing, because, we're just hacks. Yeah, feedback at tymkrs.com. And I can, of course, pass it on to Shane, too, if it's appropriate. And, well, I think that's it for us for this week. We'll see you guys next week.